like I say, for me, hiding it from people was causing anxiety. When you speak to someone and share your problem, it's quite empowering because now I've escaped that anxiety. I've shared it with someone. It's like a weight off my shoulders. I haven't got to hide
There's
it.
a huge weight in it.
So that'll be empowering in itself. And then the second reason for doing that for me is just because when you are literally at the lowest of the lows, just knowing that someone cares can be enough to keep you going.
Yeah. Welcome to the Prime Life Project podcast, a place to help you unlock your full potential, both mentally and physically, to become the best version of you. Welcome back to an episode of the Prime Life Project podcast, a place to help you both mentally and physically become the best version of you. Today, I'm delighted to introduce a very, very good friend of mine. I've known this gentleman for a very long time. We're going back to my football days. We're going back to when I was at college. I was a completely different person, and so was he. And he reached out to me the other day on Instagram, and he basically mentioned about coming on the podcast. And I think my response was something along the lines of, no offense, but what can you really bring to the show? And because we'll get into what he actually does in a second. And then he goes, let's just meet for a coffee. 2 hours later, we met for a coffee, and I was like, mate, you need to come and share this. So I've got a gentleman with me today, Mr. Dave Langsdale. How are we?
Yeah, I'm good, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me on.
It's an absolute pleasure. And I said, you've not spoken about this topic before. It's something very close to your heart. And this is why I was so shocked. I've known you for years, and the stuff we're going to talk about today, I've had no idea. Again, you're a natural pro bodybuilder, which in and of itself is an incredible achievement. And that's what I thought you wanted to talk about. So then when you were like, no, mate, I know what you're about, and I think I've got some value to add. And then we sat down. Yeah. I couldn't believe the stuff you've gone through. So let's just go back. Let's just take it back. What was life like for you growing up? Because that's kind of where things started for you when it comes onto your journey. And it all kind of fits in nicely, because what tends to happen is people have had like things happen here and there. But for you, it kind of did really all start at childhood. Yeah. So can you take my audience back to your childhood and what life was like for you growing up?
Yeah, so basically, I was born in New Zealand, and both my parents are English. They got married in England, and when they got married, they moved to New Zealand together. I was 3 years old, living in New Zealand, and my parents break up. My mum left New Zealand to be back around her family back here, and so I grew up with my mum in England, my dad on the other side of the world, and then going forwards after that, my mum remarried, and then as a result of that, I can say that my childhood probably wasn't full of a lot of love. It was a childhood which involved a lot of fear of being at home. Yeah, and through those years, obviously saw what this was doing to my mum as well. And my mum was living in fear, and it took a lot of courage and strength from her to kind of get out of that. And then the toll that takes going into your adulthood, I probably wasn't aware of at the time as much, but then...
Were you aware that something wasn't quite right, though? So at a young age, because I think it's interesting for all the parents listening to this. So taking yourself back to being a child there, were you aware of this fear, or what was it like? How were you kind of living day to day?
Yeah, I was aware that I was like fearful of being at home, and I'd spend weekends wanting to try and like get myself an invite around a friend's house and stuff like that. But in terms of what it would do to me in my later years, you're never aware of at the time. And also, even though you realise, like, okay, I'm scared of being at home, I don't think you generally realise that what you're going through at home is so out of order. So in terms of, like, now I've had times where you, like, see a 10-year-old boy and I'm thinking, that's just a little boy. Like, how can a grown man be treating someone so young the way I was probably treated through my childhood?
You don't know any different, like you said. Like you think that everyone's kind of going through the same. You think it's the norm. Yeah. And again, especially with your mum, like someone that you love and respect and is there to look after you. Yeah. You kind of just like, well, she's okay with it, so I'm okay with it. Yeah. I'll just kind of get on with it, kind of thing. Like just keep your mouth shut and crack on. Was it that sort of vibe? Kind
of. I think my mum knew that she was with someone that was causing me a tough childhood. But like I say, she had her own fears, and getting out of that was a lot harder for her than I realised at the time. So yeah, what I say is like, and then it's when you're older, you start to realise what this has done to me in terms of confidence, in terms of what I want from life going forwards. And it's only as you get older and you become a bit more emotionally intelligent that you look back and go, oh, that's happening because I went through that when I was so much younger.
Have you had a conversation with your mum about all this stuff from what happened in your childhood? Have you had like an open, honest conversation about the stuff that you saw and how you felt, or has it just been something that's kind of been brushed under the carpet?
To be honest, like me and my mum have a great relationship now, so yeah, we can talk openly with each other about everything, not just from how things were from my point of view, but also how they were from her point of view. Hasn't always been like that, which is tough because you can live with a little bit of frustration. But I'm very happy that now I have a relationship with my mum where I can talk about that stuff. And one thing I will say is you grow up with a frustration. Like I could easily go, oh, she's taken me away from my dad, or she's put me in this situation. But we know now as adults that everyone's not perfect. Everyone wants to be loved, and everyone, is craving kind of the same thing.
And your mum's going for her own, like you said, she's going for her own journey, and she was doing what she thought was best for not just her, for you as well.
Exactly.
And that's a big thing as an adult to realise. Yeah. Wow, she was struggling too. I had no idea, because I imagine you put so much blame on her. I imagine at certain points, and almost a bit of resentment.
Yeah, I feel like when you're younger, well, for me personally, you kind of see your parents and you think they've got to be these perfect people. And what I now realise, looking back, is my mum was younger then than I am now, and I'm still making mistakes. I'm still like looking for things in my life, and she would have been exactly the same. So from that standpoint, I'm just very like in awe of my mum, more for the fact that she was strong enough and had the character to get out of it, and then for what she has had to face since then as well.
I think it's a real powerful thing. Giving me goosebumps, you hearing that. I think your mum, actually listening back to this, I know she'll be listening to this. That's a powerful thing to hear, because she probably has not heard you say those words. Like the fact you're actually proud of like her going through that and actually coming out the other side, because that shows real strength. Because it's easier to stay in that situation, and we know what that's like now as an adult. Like we've both been in situations where we've potentially stayed longer than we should have done. But actually, when you've got a child there as well, it makes it 10 times harder, because you're not just uprooting your life, you're uprooting and causing instability.
At the time, she's doing the right thing that she feels in that moment, the right thing for herself and the right thing for what she felt for us. And so I have nothing but respect and obviously love for my mum, and she's been through a lot, and she's a stronger character for it as well, that I can talk to about those things.
How was your mum now? Like when she came out, obviously as an adult, looking back, like how was your mum when it comes to like dealing with those times? Because we said like your journey and how you've come on, but again, a bit of a side note here, like how's your mum's journey since that whole situation? Is she doing well now? Like what was the sort of story with that?
Yeah, she's like good now, but she's, again, like as a caring son, you're always going to hope that she's okay. Like she's on her own now and stuff, and happily so. But I will always check in on her. I try and see her like weekly and stuff, make sure she's okay. She did have years in, say, my young adult years where she was suffering really bad with depression, whether we want to call that guilt and stuff, from the decisions she'd made and what she'd seen like myself go through and everything. And also my younger brother as well, more so. And she did suffer for many years with depression. Obviously, I saw that. And as we've spoke about as friends before, you know that I moved to Australia, and that was only that was 2019. Before I moved there, like I remember one moment where she came to me and she just burst out crying, saying, "Can I give you a hug? I feel like I've always done wrong by you." So there you can see straight away what's going on in her head, and I'm the other side of that. I'm thinking, no, you haven't done wrong by me. Like you've done what you felt was right at the time, and I admire you for everything that you've done and how strong you've been.
As you mentioned as well, like looking back as the age we are now and the stuff that you went through, again, younger than how you are now, that is a big thing to sort of deal with. And again, I don't think it's any wonder that, again, potentially she did suffer with depression, because again, our parents' age don't talk about mental health. It's not really a thing. And I think they kind of suffer in silence for a long, long time. Excuse me, especially with some stuff the mum was going through. Like, I don't think it would have been a thing that happened outside of that. I think it would have slowly, gradually gone downhill. Like me and my mental health, my depression, it looked like an overnight thing, but it wasn't. It took a long time for it to sort of manifest itself. And it probably been the same with your mum. When she was by herself, you kind of have to face some demons, and it's not very easy to do that.
Exactly. And that's one thing I've known from my experience, is that it's never in the moment that you feel like something's wrong. It would be on reflection. So if I use my childhood as an example, she's gone through many years like in fear, upset about the way I'm being treated and stuff like that. And she's probably bottled it up, just getting by day by day. And then it's years later on reflection that she's still got them memories in her head. and she's on her own now, and this isn't all going on, and she's thinking about it more and more, and obviously it's took its toll, and like you say, then that's when she's become more depressed.
I just want to quickly link it back to when you're saying about not enjoying being at home, because I remember when we were speaking before, that you saying you used to walk the streets.
Yeah.
Can you talk to me about that? Because that for me, as like a 10-year-old, however old you were at that time, just roaming the streets. Obviously, I know it was a lot more common back then. Like kids used to actually play outside, but what was kind of going on internally, like your internal monologue at that time, like when you were walking the streets, like what were you do? Because it's very easy, I feel, for people in that situation, especially kids, to go down the wrong path, to get in with the wrong crowd, just to not be at home. So can you just take me back to like where your sort of head was at that time when you were roaming the streets? Were you just literally trying not to be at home, or was there other things that were going on?
Yeah, so say it was times where all your friends are at home and they're, I don't know, having dinner and stuff like that, like, and no one's around to kind of like play football with or whatever. I do remember times like, say, in school holidays and stuff where I was like, my mum's not at home, she's not home from work yet, I just don't want to be at home because of the way I might be spoken to, the way I might be treated, and so I'd just literally just be walking the streets in my own little world, because that was a lot more peaceful than being at home.
So when you talk about that, like how you were spoken to, how you were treated, how did that affect your confidence? Because I think I said this to you when we were in the pub. But I don't drink, by the way. We're having
coffee.
But yeah, both coffees. We were talking about how when I first met you at college. I think you were a bit shocked at what my first impressions of you were. So again, I'll paint the story for the audience. So when I first met Dave, we were it was a goalkeeping trial. So Dave's a year older than me at college. So he was the number one goalkeeper. I then come in at a trial, and there's a massive, like, 4 fields worth of players playing. And Dave was on the opposite team to me. So I was in the same team as Dave, and blah, blah. And I was saying to my dad, like, I think that's the current college goalkeeper. And Dave's attitude towards me in that trial was very much a, who the hell is this guy? And there's me like buzzing, like, it's Dave, like he plays for college, because the college was attached to my school, so we kind of always looked up to the college kids, because you always walked around
we got the tracksuit already.
And it's so cool. And I was like, oh my god, it's Dave Langsdale. And then he kind of looked at me like, who the hell is this guy? And I remember saying to my dad, I think that guy's a bit of a dick. But then when I got into the team, me and you became really good friends. Like, and it's like, obviously you wouldn't have remembered that when we spoke about it in the pub. Like, for you, I was a nobody, and there was all these people there trying to take your place. So I didn't hold anything against you, but it's just interesting. You then kind of mentioned, well, actually, I probably wasn't in a good headspace at that time anyway. And it's just really interesting, isn't it, how in life we can judge people on this one incident. So I met you that one time, and then imagine if I'd never seen you again. My whole view on you would be always a bit of a dick. But you weren't. And you probably didn't know what you go through and how you came across at all, and became good friends. Yeah,
what I find interesting with that as well, when you told me, I was in so much shock. Like, what, I used to come across like that? Because like that seems so far away from the way I see myself, but it shows how much we evolve as people as well. And then on reflection now, knowing what I know, I think, maybe I was a bit like that, at that age. And it goes back to the confidence thing. And probably not being as high on confidence as actually what I thought. So I was never aware in them years, like going into my teen years, that I was low on confidence. But it's only now that I look back and I go, my self-esteem was pretty low, like.
How can you give me some example? Like, what would you say, like, looking back then retrospectively, why was your self-esteem low? Like, also, we know why, but like, how did that come across? Like, how was that expressing itself?
So I can use football as an example, I guess, but like I look back and I was very serious about football. Football was almost my escape from my childhood. Like, I was very determined to play football at a good level, and I think that kind of saved me in a sense from when you say about mixing with the wrong crowds and going down the wrong route. And I look back now and you could literally go from being, I don't know, on top of your game, and then I look back at times where I was awful, and it was like the one thing I didn't even realize it at the time was my level of confidence. Now that could change so easily just through something someone said, and on reflection of that, it's probably come from them childhood years where my confidence is being impacted by what someone's saying to me on a daily basis, and then after that it would be affected in the same way.
How do you feel it's affected? Because I imagine, again, I didn't have this experience myself, but I've listened to a lot of like podcasts and stuff where potentially the podcast host, when he was younger, had like an alcoholic father or something like that happen, and he always used to say that he didn't know what he was going to be presented to when he opened the door. So when he walked in, he was very much trying to suss out the whole situation and trying to suss out what kind of mood are they in. Is that something that you kind of pick up on? Does that ring true to you as well? And do you think that kind of transitioned over into your adult life as well? Yeah,
definitely. So that's exactly how it would be for me. I never knew what I was going to get, and that's probably where the fear came in as well. And And like you say, it does make you very wary going into your later years. And like you say, it's only when you break it down and reflect on it that you realise it.
Would you say that in that situation then, how else does that express itself? Like when it comes to adult relationships, are you able to read people? So again, I'm then using this one particular podcast host from what I can remember, and he was saying that actually that happening really helped him in life because he was able to read people very, very well. Like if people was like mood change, mood shifts. Have you noticed that as well in relationships or in friendships or anything like that? Or was that not really a crossover that you've noticed?
I'd say now I can be very calm around like chaos and stuff, and it is maybe because I grew up around a lot of it, so I learnt from a young age like how to deal with that kind of thing. So I'd definitely say in regards to that, like, yeah, I can suss out a situation pretty quick. I can suss out moods pretty quick. And yeah, that's something that helps now, I'd say, yeah.
Can you talk to me about your biological dad?
Yeah.
The ones in New Zealand still. How was your relationship with him during this time? Because obviously you're very fearful of being at home.
Yeah.
Obviously, clearly, I imagine grieving for the loss of your dad, because I don't know, FaceTime wasn't really a thing back then, was it? Or
I
MSN
remember the internet first starting, and it was like, oh, we could email now. Like, what's this? Like,
so what was that like for you growing up, knowing that you're in this situation and you've kind of got this dad, this other side of the world? I imagine that you kind of painted him in this picture of almost like a god or a savior or something like. Is that kind of how it works?
It's interesting because I've spoke to you about this before, and you clicked onto that straight away, like the savior and the god, and it's like, wow, you've clicked onto that straight away. So yeah, basically we didn't really have we had next to no contact, to be honest. All I knew was my dad was on the other side of the world, and I knew that he played football. So I love football, and I've got this dad now on the other side of the world that plays football. So it's almost like he's my hero, but I don't even know him. You know what I mean? Yeah. It's like, you're not my dad. Like, you're treating me like this. That's my dad. And it's like you say, I placed him on such a pedestal without even speaking to him. And again, then that's something you deal with in your later life when you get to know them a bit more. And yeah, things are different to what you've pictured in your head, maybe.
Was your mum ever, how did your mum speak about him? Just pure curiosity, like, was your mum kind about him, saying he's a good man, like, or was it just, was he not really spoken about?
I don't generally remember my mum speaking about him too much. She definitely didn't discourage us having a relationship or anything like that. And again, it's probably something I've realised more now, that she may have had frustrations towards how much effort was going in, I don't know. But then obviously I had a stepfather, and I'd hear like a few hateful conversations and stuff. And I'd be like, well, that's not right. My dad plays football. You know what I mean?
My
like,
dad's a hero. You don't know him. And then thinking back down, well, I don't really know him either, but that doesn't click in.
But like I say, you figure things out for yourself as you get older. And I'd say one thing that I've taken from that, so now we're older, obviously these situations changed, and I've got friends now who are dads, for example, who might be going through a breakup from the mother to their children, and I've had these conversations in recent days, and they're maybe distressed that they're not getting to see their kids or something like that, and I say to them, trust me, like, your kids will know the truth in time, so just keep making the effort for them and keep showing them love, because when we get older, they might be little now, but when they get older, they'll figure everything out.
I've said
themselves.
That as well, because I've got a lot of my clients as well that are females, and it's the role reversed, where again, in that situation, the kids are like idolizing the dad.
Yeah.
And like the clients coming to me saying, yeah, but I'm like, the truth will come out.
Yeah.
The truth is the truth. The kids will find out. Let them worship their dad and idolize their dad.
Yeah.
Because I said, at the end of the day, you've got to let them have a relationship as much as you can. Obviously, most people aren't on the other side of the world like your dad was. But by you being the bad guy and stopping the child seeing their dad, that's easy for you to be painted in a bad way. Yeah. But actually, just the truth will come out whether you like it or not. And that's why I wanted to sort of go down a sort of rabbit hole a bit for parents listening to this. Yeah. That may be going for a breakthrough, maybe have a step mum or step dad in their life. Yeah. And actually the impact that can have on a kid. And that's why I really want to go down this sort of starting point here, because people don't really realise the impact it has on the kids at that point. Yeah, and what I will say is, from my experience as well, all we want to do is love our parents. You know, that you're always going to want to look up to your parents. You're always going to want the love and affection from your parents. So any person that is in that situation who's got a child, that child is going to want to look up to you and going to want to love you. So as long as you keep showing that, like we say, in time, that's all they will see eventually, even if it doesn't seem like that right now. No, absolutely love that. So let's then talk about like moving on a little bit. Like, you've dealt with a lot. Like I said, that's just the start. So this way. I shared my story with you because you hadn't heard my story, so I shared my story with you.
Yeah, I think we both sat there open mouthed like.
And then you were
Dan,
like,
I didn't realise.
And you're like, oh, it's my turn. And then you told me this part, and I was like, oh, is that it? And you went, oh mate, no, I've just started. I was like, what? Because straight away that can, because again, especially the kind of guy you are, and this is the thing, I've never met anybody have a bad word to say about you. Like one of the coaches that works with my project, Charlie, again says, well, nice guy. You are literally just a genuinely very nice, humble guy. And again, even like your physique, outstanding. Like you're literally the top bodybuilder in the world, natural bodybuilder, incredible. You've got every reason to be egotistical, arrogant, all of these things. And then especially when you look at that upbringing, it's almost like you'd expect that, but that's not you at all, which is why when you're telling me this story, it's like, mate, I've got even more respect for you now because I know you as this amazing guy. That's, again, we've not been close for a long time. I'm like, you mate, you're a great guy. I know that if I've reached out to you, that we could have a good chat. And I was like, wow. And he started off in that situation. Look where he's come. But then after that, things got a bit rocky and turbulent as well. So obviously you then went to meet your dad in New Zealand. Did you go to New Zealand first and then Australia? So it was New Zealand first to go meet your dad?
So when I was 19, after college, I went to move to New Zealand. Like I said, my dad hadn't really been in my life through my childhood in terms of like face-to-face. There was a part of me that wanted to go get to know my dad again, because he's like, you know, I say you want to love your parents. You want to love your parents. And as you know, we were playing football at the time, quite serious, and you joined that together with the fact I was born in New Zealand. My dad's over there. I wanted to go play football at the top level in New Zealand, so it all made sense. So at 19, I moved over there, and it ended up being a year. I mean, I went through a little bit of homesickness and stuff, but I would say that, yeah, I probably struggled in a lot of ways. I can't really say a bad word about my dad, but it wasn't like I'd expected.
I think in fairness to him, it was never ever going to be what you'd made in your head, because he was literally, like you said, you'd made him as a god, and he's a flawed human like we all are. So he was, even if he was quote unquote the perfect dad, how you bigged him up, he was never going to live up to that. Exactly
the same as what I'm saying about my mum. Like, she's just a young adult making decisions, trying to do right. He'd have been the same when I'm going through my childhood. His kids are on the other side of the world, like through the choice of my mum, let's say. So yeah, it's not any fault of his own, but at the same time, my expectation probably wasn't met in that regard. I was struggling with a bit of homesickness at 19 when you leave all your friends. Like, the reality of it kicked in once I moved there. But I still had a great time, but decided to come back. And then it was on returning back. I mean, the years coming after that, going into my 20s as such, that's when I started to see my mum's mental state probably decline more and more. She faced more and more problems, whether it be like with work, losing a house, like all that kind of stuff. And she's still got 3 sons that she's trying to look out for and everything, and like help us navigate the start of our adult life.
How did you find that? Like, 'cause again, obviously So you've had this relationship with your mum and stepdad, wasn't great. You then gone to Australia, New Zealand for your dad, wasn't great. You then come back, and then your mum's then struggling mentally. Like, for you personally, how did that then affect you? Because again, that's a hard thing to see. Again, just anyone listening to this that's older than like 25, takes it back to when you're 20. So I'm just taking myself back. I'm picturing it. Like, I was in America at that time. That's a lot to put on me. I'm taking myself back to young Daniel. We didn't know any of this stuff. Like, obviously, you're well versed in stuff now. You've gone through a lot. Same with myself. But at that age, I wouldn't be able to deal with seeing something like that. So how did you then deal with that?
So when I came back from New Zealand, I'd say that's when frustration probably started to kick in more than ever, because I was seeing my mum like in a tougher place. And maybe she made some decisions well around that time that I didn't necessarily agree with. And I would say back then compared to now, I wasn't really aware of like what depression really was, or mental health and all that kind of stuff. I'm just in my young 20s, a bit carefree. You care about what all your mates think, the reputation of, say, your mum and whatever and stuff like that, and your family. And everything's driven by what other people think of you more. So I was in this frustrated place, like, what's going on here? What's my mum doing this and this for? And
was there any anger, or was it just frustration? Did it boil over to anger, or was it just more an internal frustration?
I wouldn't say necessarily anger. I never really remember like getting angry with my mum or anything. But yeah, more just like frustration and hurt. But then these are the things that I look back on now, and I just think my mum, same as anyone, just was trying to make decisions to try and benefit her from a mental standpoint, feel happiness and feel loved. So yeah, those younger adult years were probably years of more frustration for me, and I just like carried on doing the usual stuff like playing football and stuff like that. And yeah, from there, that's when I got more and more into obviously the bodybuilding and stuff like that as well.
Because you're saying that was a bit of your escape, wasn't it, the gym?
Yeah.
And obviously when we get into your story a little bit later on and during the lockdown periods, I remember seeing you on Instagram and I remember thinking, like, bear in mind, I'm in the fitness industry and I see you training during the lockdowns and I'm thinking, mate, will you calm down?
Yeah.
I was thinking, why are you going so hard during the lockdowns? And obviously when we get into your story a bit more, I was like, that makes complete sense. I didn't even click because I didn't, and this is again where I think it's really interesting when we're talking about this when it comes to mental health. With all the stuff I know, I didn't associate you with struggling with mental health.
Yeah.
And it just goes to show that mental health doesn't have a look.
Yeah, that's
people
very
are struggling.
true.
It doesn't have a look. Like there's no sort of obviously there's a telltale signs.
Yeah.
But you can anyone in your life could be struggling mentally, really struggling, and you have no idea because looking at your page, it's like he's just a bit obsessed with the gym.
Yeah.
That was really it. And
Yeah.
again, the way you were talking, holding yourself, conducting yourself, the videos, I was like, oh, he's fine. He's
Yeah,
absolutely
yeah,
smashing.
yeah.
He's fine. He's just really obsessed with the gym.
Yeah.
Didn't think anything more of it. And it's just really interesting for the audience listening to this to be like, you don't know what people are going through and how much they're struggling.
Yeah.
So let's then talk about a big decision. Obviously, I took my big decision, went to America.
Yeah.
You then decided to go to the other side of the world again. You've got a thing with that side of the world.
Yeah,
I'm quite jealous. Like, you're in New Zealand.
It's that passport, you see, keeps dragging me back.
When you were saying New Zealand, it's always one of the places I've wanted to go to. So then let's talk to him about going to Australia then, and then we'll sort of go there because this is kind of really now where if we're on a roller coaster, we've kind of had a few bumps, but this is really kind of where your life takes a bit of a nosedive. So let's just sort of talk about that a bit.
Yeah, this actually went on over a number of years. So like, let's say, so I remember, so when my mum's depression was probably at its worst, I mean, life for me wasn't bad around that time. It was actually really good. Like I was doing a lot of things similar to you that I remember you did. Like, so I got involved doing like fitness modeling and stuff. I was signed to a fitness model agency in London, personal training, doing all stuff I enjoy. I'm actually living with my mum at the time, just me and her depression's at the worst, but I'm obviously doing all my own stuff, but with that frustration on the side of what my mum's going through and the conversations I was having with her back home. But in that time, I was doing a lot of traveling as well. So whether it be like Thailand, Australia, I was flying back and forth to New Zealand. So life was good, to be honest. And I actually went on a stag do with one of my friends to Ibiza, and I met someone while I was there. And then this it was someone from Australia, and this relationship went like over a number of years. We kept in contact and stuff. We'd see each other here and there because, like I say, I'm flying to Australia, traveling. Life was good, you know. Because one thing that probably seeing someone depressed at home probably made me do was it made me want to live my life to the full. And I've got this passport, and I love to travel. I've found my love of traveling. And then it kind of got to a point where I felt like I had a decision to make, and I was like, do I stay in England or do I move to Australia? And I decided to move to Australia. So making that decision, it was almost like, okay, I was born in New Zealand. It's never really kind of made sense to me why I've got this passport, because I've obviously gone to New Zealand. It's not really worked for me there. And I kind of, on reflection now, the story in my head was, that's why I've got this New Zealand passport. I was meant to meet this person.
Yeah.
I'm meant to live in Australia. Yeah. I'm going to go live the dream over there. I'm going to be living 2 minutes from the beach. I'm going to be with the love of my life. All that frustration I've been through over the years with my family, like I'm getting away from that now.
Yeah. This has led to this moment. It's meant to happen.
This all makes sense now. I'm going to go live this life in Australia. It's going to be perfect, you know. I've got money saved in the bank, everything. I'm ready to go. Moved over there and learnt very, very quickly that my the reality was not meeting the expectation.
I think that's because, again, we kind of spoke about this in the middle of our story where you've had this big sort of incident, but I mean, that's a very similar thing where I basically moved someone down from the other side of the UK, not to Australia. But again, the expectation versus the reality, and kind of when it hits you, it's a bit like, so I remember with this, like you were expecting this whole real big happy life, and you sort of got there, and there was religious differences with families and stuff, and you actually end up, so you go there to move in with this amazing person you've met, and you end up having to live by yourself. So can you talk to me about that? Because I remember you sort of mentioned there that was quite like a lonely experience for you. You were sat there, in a house by yourself, room by yourself, wherever it was, and how was that for you?
Yeah, I don't really have like it's nothing against her. Like I don't have a bad word to say about her because obviously she's got a different, like, I don't know, her life growing up again was different to mine. Everyone's different. I mean, when things don't work out in a relationship, it's probably easy to be a little bit bitter and stuff. But on reflection, like, it's nobody's fault other than my own that I had that expectation built in my head that that's how it was going to work out.
It is a little thing in my head, actually, just thinking on this. Do you think that with this, so your mum's struggling.
Yeah.
Do you think there's a sort of thing with this of escapism and almost like running away, like, again, making up in my head, like fairy tale land? So you kind of done it with your dad a little bit of like, this isn't great. I'm just going to go and meet my dad. It's going to be amazing. It doesn't work out. And then, because again, I've done this with women more times than I care to admit, that I basically idolize them and I put them on a pedestal. I'm like, this is the one. Like, if I look back in my life, genuinely, I probably had about 7 the ones. And I will look back now, I'm like, it was never, this is my experience, it was never love that I thought it was lust.
Yeah.
And it was the idea that I'd created in my head.
Yeah.
And as you sort of said about the expectation, I'd put complete unnecessary pressure on them. They had no idea of that this person was going to fix all my problems.
Yeah.
So looking back at it now, do you think that there was a kind of escapism there of, don't really like this, I'm going to go here, and then you kind of big this up, kind of like you did with your dad almost, of this is going to be this amazing thing. Was it not like that?
I'd say a little bit of both. So I think there was some form of escapism in the fact I had a lot of frustrations towards, say, what I'd seen my mum go through and stuff like that. So I kind of wanted to escape that without realising it. But then in terms of like saying putting this person on a pedestal, I feel like that would be a little bit unfair to say because on reflection now that like I've calmed down about the heartbreak of the breakup and all that kind of stuff, I had some of the best times of my life with that person. So I can't ever say that that was just like a false thing that I've built them on a pedestal because there was a time where we was having amazing times together.
Absolutely.
So you don't want to discredit that on reflection. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I'm very happy that I had those moments.
Do you think that was because, again, it was because you're both travelling? So it wasn't in the real world almost.
Yeah,
like a holiday romance.
Yeah,
almost.
there was definitely that because, as we say, the reality when it becomes a full-time almost relationship is very different to how it's going to be when I'm on holidays in Australia all the time. And that crosses your mind at the time, like, oh, will it be different when I move? And maybe I was a bit like, no, this is the real thing. So there was some false expectation and stuff. And from that point of view.
So that's the key thing you picked up on there as well. Like, no matter how much heartbreak and stuff you went through, and there's that amazing saying, it's better to have loved than to have lost than to never loved at all. So yes, this thing was bad, but actually the good times, again, upon reflection, I bet they're absolutely awesome. Yeah. And that's the thing to remember on that.
Exactly.
It's as you said, you again, she went into this whole situation with the best intentions. So did you. But it's just situational, especially when there's pressure from outside, things like family and stuff like that. Again, you are away from home. So again, you probably wouldn't have been your natural self.
And that is exactly it. That's what I feel like was a big problem for me, was that I kind of wasn't myself in them times because I felt this is where I first probably realized what anxiety was, because every time something felt like it wasn't going right, my mind's just going crazy, like, this has got to work else, like, I'm on the other side of the world, I'm going to be on my own, I've like given up everything back home, like, so that's where the anxiety started to kick in a little bit.
Do you think then you put those anxieties onto her, like seeking validation, like, is this working, or is that something that you were doing?
Yeah, so definitely. So if I look back now, you think at the time like this person is in the wrong and all that, but then I look back and I know, like, I've read books like, I don't know, like The Chimp's Paradox and stuff about controlling my emotions. And I look back and I go, I probably could have controlled my emotions a little bit more in certain situations. But like you say, maybe the pressure of the whole situation is something that I had added to it all and made things a lot harder,
Had you got a lot of suppressed emotions as well? Like, as a kid, were you emotional? Were you allowed to, I say loud, like, were you expressing emotions? Were you an emotional child? Or because I think the reason I'm saying that is, as an adult, again, that age you kind of were like a young adult male, again, your story is very similar. As we were sharing our stories, very, very similar, scarily similar. That I know my situation when I was in back then. I remember the exact day. I was on Mikey's podcast and I spoke about this story with this bird, this woman. Sorry, bird. I say that, I hate it. I don't know why I said that. That is old Daniel. That's old Daniel thinking about that time, and that's how old Daniel spoke. Thinking about this woman at the time, and I was then sharing the story with Mikey, things on Mikey's podcast, and then I stopped and I said, that's not actually how that happened. And what I'd done is I'd created a story in my head to match how I was feeling. Now, there was some facts of the story, but then what happened is I'd retold this story so many times to people and to myself that made me the victim, that I then said to Mikey, I don't actually know how much of that story is true. And it literally wasn't Michael on that part. Literally, and it scared me. It was the first time it kind of hit me like a train. I was like, I don't actually know how much of that's true.
And that shows how powerful it is when like your emotions start to kick in. They can literally change the reality and stuff.
So how do you think? How would you think? Do you think there was a lot of suppressed emotions there that were coming out, or had you been able to express emotions freely before that? Because guys are terrible.
It's interesting you asking that because it's not something I've thought about in that much detail. But I'd probably say yes, like because up until this point, I haven't really struggled myself too much in terms of, let's say, like mental health and stuff. But then I started to feel a lot more emotional with the pressure of the situation and everything. And I'd spoken to someone about it actually when I returned home, and I basically told them the story about when it was like confirmed we were breaking up, and I just broke down in tears and like I was going home, and then she said to me, "Is that how you'd have reacted as a child?" And I was like, "Yeah, it was, yeah." And she's like, "You're not a child anymore." Like, so yeah, I definitely do think that would have been the case. And then those situations where I think someone else is in the wrong, you start to realize, no, you need to like start owning your own emotions and be more of an adult in those situations and not act out through emotion a lot more.
I think it's a big thing as well, because we've mentioned about this, like the whole people-pleasing thing as well. I imagine that's a big thing for you, because I know that was me to a T.
Yeah.
And I think that was one of the biggest things that led me down my dark hole of my depression, is that I was trying to be everything to everyone, not realising that I was giving nothing to myself.
Yeah.
And at some point, it's like the game of Buckaroo. There's only so much, and I imagine it's the same with you. Like, you put so much stuff on that donkey, and you were fine until a certain point, and then you put one final thing on, and then the whole thing explodes.
Yeah.
That was kind of me, but mine was for me, and I think we kind of linked on as well, just validation. Especially when it comes to the modelling, like people assume that you're very confident being a model. I was the least confident I'd ever been when I was modelling, and no self-respect, no self-love. I was very insecure, and I wanted people to love me, and it was a very, for me, toxic recipe for disaster. It was only gonna, if someone could see me and had spoken to me on a deep level, they'd be able to unpick that I was only going one way. Because I hated myself. I was trying to basically please everybody, and it just wasn't thing. Can you kind of relate to that? Like
I can with the people pleasing thing, because I look back now and I think a lot of the decisions I made upon like that move and the things that I was doing there weren't really paying attention to like where I wanted my life to go and what things made me happy. It was more based on like, okay, I want to be with this person, so I need to do this, this and this. And then that will make the relationship a happy one. Do you know what I mean?
Even if it doesn't like suit you or serve
you. And even to the point where I probably didn't even think about it that much. I kind of just thought, yeah, that's what I want to do. But then I look back now and I just think that wasn't really me. That wasn't really ever like going to serve me well long term, because it wasn't what I'm about.
Mate, we've all been there. So can you then talk to me about rock bottom? You're at bottom. Like, where did this happen in your story and your journey? I know it's around about this sort of time. Can you sort of take my audience to where that was for you? Because this is, again, quite a pivotal thing. You've kind of surfed a lot of waves at this point. Like, you've kind of dodged a lot of bullets. Like, you haven't really hit rock bottom.
Nothing.
You've been good.
Yeah.
Things are kind of build up.
It's funny you say that about like dodging bullets and this wave and everything. And this is where, like I say, my frustrations towards my mum were there, but then they've changed now since I've been through it. Because at the time it was like, I don't know how to say it, but it was like, I'd see what my mum was going through, and it's like, yeah, but I've been through this, this, and this, and I'm fine. Like, so why are you not fine? Like, come on, get out of bed. Like, you got stuff to be doing. Like, I'm going to the gym. I'm doing this and that. Like, I'm traveling. I'm working.
Fine.
Yeah,
I'm fine.
I'm fine. Yeah, when really it's just all been pushed to the back of the mind. I'm going to ignore it. But yeah, basically what happened then was, obviously, I'm going for this dream move to the other side of the world. I'm going to live there for the rest of my life. That's where I'm going to live. My family's going to be over there with this person. And then it hit me like a ton of bricks when obviously things didn't work out for one reason or another. And then I remember the day we broke up, she said to me, "What are you going to do?" And I would just burst out crying. I said, "I just need to go home." And like, so that thing that I've escaped from this place, and now all I feel is I need to go home, because I knew I wasn't in a good place. And it hit me then. I remember I had about 2 weeks from then until I booked a flight home, had about 2 weeks. And in between like working or going to the gym, didn't really have anywhere to be or anything. I just remember driving my car, just like pulling up at shops. I didn't even need to go in the shops. I'd just sit in my car crying. So I was well aware I wasn't in a good place. I was talking to friends back home on the phone, and a couple knew what was going on and that I was coming home. So I wouldn't say at this point I'd say, oh, I felt like I was depressed. I just knew I needed to get home. I remember sitting at the airport and I just felt numb. Like people were just walking by and it was just like, the world's just floating by me. I was like, didn't really have any emotion at that point. Got on the plane, come home. I came home in like the November, so it's summer over in Australia. It was winter in England.
It's like a double whammy, isn't it? Like you're miserable anyway, and you come home and it's like miserable, raining, wet, cold.
Exactly. So I'm back living with my mum because I've got nowhere to go. I remember actually the day before I left Australia, I've got all these clothes I've bought and everything. I just picked them all up, put them in a bin liner, chucked them in the bin. I was like, I don't care about like any of these possessions or whatever. So I've literally come home with just a suitcase of clothes. That's all I've got to my name at this point. Come home, I'm back at my mum's place. All the money I had saved pretty much gone. So then it was only then like, I haven't got a job at this point. I've just got home. I'm back to where I felt a lot of frustration. And it's like, I've gone from having this dream life ahead of me to being back in England. I looked outside. It's dark. It's cold. It's raining. My money's gone. It felt like everything had gone, basically. My mental state, like my
was
happiness.
Was your mum still struggling at this point as well when you got back?
Yeah, I'd say she was.
So you're also not in a good home environment. And like your mum's struggling.
I hope she doesn't mind me telling this story, but for example, like I've come home to my mum's house and I hope she doesn't mind me sharing this, but I came back and it's like, okay, I've come back and I've looked and the bathroom door's got holes in it from where she's like took a hammer to the bathroom door in frustration one day. So it was quite clear that she still was a bit like, not.
Which again, to understand, because again, it's people don't open up and talk about it.
Yeah.
And again, especially in that regard, like there's so much built up stuff there. So again, it comes out in whatever way. Yeah. So when I'm hearing that, like, we've all
it's a release of frustration.
And again, if you're not taught how to deal with it,
exactly.
So then you're in that sort of household and that environment.
Yeah.
You're then not in that good headspace.
Yeah.
What was going on through your head right then?
So the reality of it was I'd wake up in the morning, like I say, I haven't got a job yet at this point. Obviously, I'm thinking, right, I need to get back working. I need to get back earning money. But I was in a place of like, everything's gone wrong, basically. Like, and I remember I'd wake up in the morning and just start screaming that I'd woke up and I had another day to get through. I mean, I've spoken to people, I don't mind speaking openly about this, but I remember looking out the window and just thinking, my life always goes wrong. I started like reflecting back to everything I'd been through, my childhood, like even when I played football, like I'd snap my knee, like at the point where I played at the highest level and I couldn't play again for 2 years. You start like replaying all these memories of everything that's gone wrong. Now my life was sorted. I was going to Australia. Everything made sense. It's gone wrong. I've got nothing. My money's gone. I've got like just a suitcase of clothes. I'm back here. I'm back in this environment. And I just remember looking outside thinking, my life is like doomed almost. And I literally remember thinking in this moment, looking out the window, this is what it must feel like for people when they commit suicide. So I can openly say, like, I didn't ever want to end my life, because in that moment I thought that's what it must feel like, but I'm not going to do that. I just know. This is how I felt at the time. I know the rest of my life's not going to be that great because things never go right for me. And then it was like just that complete spiral of thinking, maybe, do I say victim mindset? I don't know, but I was feeling like
in that headspace.
Exactly.
Let's say victim mindset, and I said I think people, because again I use victim mindset all the time, say it's negative, because it is negative.
Yeah.
However, in that headspace, you go there. It's a natural place to go. The problem is when you stay there. Yeah, that's the problem. When people get comfortable being there, but when you go there, we all still do it. I still do it now. Like, you get into a headspace, something happens, and your first thing is, wow, and then you start to feel sorry for yourself. But the
Yeah.
problem is, when you stay there,
Yeah.
you can't do anything. You can't do anything from that place. When I talk about the victim mindset, it's not a bad thing. It's a bad thing when you stay there.
Yeah. Okay.
So for you to have that moment,
that makes more
it's
sense.
like, do you know when you're there and you're like, wow. But you needed that realization to be like, wow. And you start to feel a bit sorry for yourself, and then kind of like, and I've got a quote here that we've got from the pub. So I've got two quotes. It says, life won't get better. So you just mentioned that. And the second one is, I am the problem.
Yeah.
So again, that kind of realization of like, I am the problem.
Yeah.
And that's I remember that was the hardest thing that I've ever had to realize in my life, is that all these things have happened and I'm the common denominator. And obviously, as a child, you aren't the problem there. There's nothing you could have done about that.
Yeah.
But also there's gone on in life where you've made decisions and the decisions that you've made haven't worked out.
Yeah.
That's a hard pill to swallow.
And that's the thing, that it's very easy. So let's talk about breakups, for example. Use that as an example. It's easy to blame someone else. It's easy to think, oh, this person's done that, they've screwed me over. But at the end of the day, the hardest thing to do is to go, no, that's my fault. And to be fair, I got a couple of friends that I spoke to around the time, and they would tell me that, like, maybe when I'd say like blaming other people or whatever, they'd be like, well, you made the decision to go there, it didn't work out, like, kind of like, it's your decision sort of thing. And I see it more in people now as well, like when I'm trying to like give advice and stuff, and you see it, like, people are very frustrated by the actions of other people, and the hardest thing to do is realize, okay, there are things that I can do differently and I could do differently, but we find it hard sometimes to admit that we're wrong. Even if someone else has treated you badly, like, it's not always about you. They might be going through their own thing, but you do have a choice about how you deal with that.
Always.
And I obviously didn't deal with it in the best of ways at certain times, and I have to take ownership of that. And it did take, like you say, a bit of pill to swallow to realise that as well.
And that's the thing that, like, obviously we spoke about, so that happened to me last year as well, and it's, people think situations will happen to you and it's not in your control, it's not your fault. Some people, let's be honest, are just dicks.
Yeah.
But by you pushing that narrative, the victim mindset, you're giving them all the power. If you can just take just 1% responsibility and just focus on that 1%, that is then empowering for you.
Yeah.
And then that's things like, you're not taking any of their responsibility, you're just taking the responsibility you can take for you. Because again, as you said, you made that decision, you made certain things, and especially in relationships, this is where, again, something I learned, it's when I was dating, someone basically said, like, if you're on a date and the other person's always blaming their ex or talking negative of their ex, that's a red flag. Yeah. Because it can't always be. Yeah. That's not the case. Like, if they're turning around saying, yeah, well, actually, I was this, I was that. Yeah. They played their part. Yeah. But actually, I played a massive part. That shows real awareness of self, which not many people have. And
I think the determining thing for me was when you're in that place where you feel so low, and I just remember, like, I would have done anything at that time to stop feeling like that. Now, me sitting around feeling bitter about the actions of someone else isn't helping me get out of that place. It's only making it worse. The moment, as hard as it is, that I start to realize there's things that I can control, that I can change, that's the moment things can start to get better for me, because I've got control again now.
So what did you control?
So my perspective on the situation more than anything. I haven't been screwed over. Like, it's not anyone else's fault. I chose to go to Australia. I put myself in that situation. And now it's only actually these years later that I look back and go, oh, I wish I'd handled that situation a bit better.
It's horrible,
mate.
It
is.
Mate,
it's the worst.
Don't. Because you're saying that, I could feel your pain, because I know exactly what it's like. You look back and wait, mate, I handled that so poorly. It's also embarrassing. Yeah. And you just want to go back and apologise, but obviously you can't do that. Exactly. But that's what you want to do, because you're like, wow. And that's why I talk about this a lot. Like, I have been a dick, and I've really hurt people in my life. Like, and again, even then mentioning the word birds, that's how I used to genuinely talk. And and I look back and think, I've hurt so many people. And when I've made this realization, it's that, wow. Yeah. I've hurt some people here. Like, wow. And it's almost like it takes a lot to just put that bag down, because you can carry that with you as well, that guilt and that shame for how you've acted, but you only know what you know. Exactly. In that moment, you weren't deliberately doing that.
And your emotions take over, whereas now, say I'm over some heartbreak, I can look back on it with a bit more clarification, and I can go, oh, hang on a minute. Like, say someone does this and it goes against me and I feel a bit betrayed, for example. At the time when I'm like heartbroken and my emotions take over, it's like, how dare you do that to me? But now I look back outside of the situation and I go, kind of understand why they did that.
Yeah.
Like the pressures they're under in their life and what they've been through, I can understand it. And I'm at peace with that then, because I can understand it from their point of view, and I know there's things I can do better for my life going forward that will make my life better as well.
In a beautiful place where you get the place of peace.
Yeah.
Just accept
so
it.
much
Just
better.
accept, oh, mate.
Yeah. And like I say, now I look back on them years of my life, when I came back, I was depressed, the lowest I've ever been in my life. Now I look back on them times and I'm picking out the bits where I'm like, I was happy then. You know, I had a great time when I went over this time, when we did this, and, you know.
Isn't it fantastic? Mate, honestly, and this try and get to people at the stage we're at where they can, again, people just walk around this rucksack of all this past trauma, negativity, things they've done, mistakes they've made. And they never just take that backpack off and just rummage through it and deal with it and sort it all out and just put that bag down, because then it allows you to look back, because there is positive moments that have happened in that time. Like I said, some amazing adventures. Again, even Australia, it's a beautiful place to live. It's like just ticking all these boxes off. You've actually spent some time with your dad. Some people never get to have that. No matter how negative it was, there's still some positives there.
It's all perspective, isn't it?
Exactly. And I think one thing I want to pick up on here as well before we sort of go on to the next part is, you mentioned looking out the window and how you were at that low point. You said, I'd have done anything not to feel like that.
Yeah.
I just want to pick up on that, because that's where a lot of people in that situation turn to drugs, alcohol, all that stuff. And again, you sort of mentioned like this is how people feel when they're done, like, on the edge. I think people listening to that there, like that's a real powerful thing, because people don't really understand what people are thinking. Yeah. But they're not thinking clearly. That's not a rational. You're not in your right frame of mind. And right then, I'd have done anything. That's when people, try this drug. Yeah, and okay. Never you'd have taken a drug in your life. No. But if someone says to you, this will make you feel better, I'm not saying but that's how people get into it. It's a gateway of escapism of, I just don't want to feel like this anymore. Just give me something. And
that's what I kind of gauge listening to podcasts and people who have been through it. It seems like, I don't want to swear, so I'll say F it moments. People just think, F it, I may as well just do that.
Yeah. It's easier
because everything's gone. Then, like,
it's complete escapism. Yeah. Now, I want to skip past the part of the story because I don't think it's going to add much to it. But I then want to kind of tie a little bit into it with the bodybuilding. Yeah. Because you kind of really ramped up your bodybuilding in this moment, and again, there's been a lot of stuff you've had to go through. There's a lot of other things you've had to sort of go through, like pressures, dealing with other people, other situations. But your constant has been the gym. And this, I think now, whereas, again, a lot of the people listening to this, that are your fan base, they know you as this guy. Yeah. I think it's been really important to sort of set the stage there for that. Yeah. Because for you to achieve what you've done naturally, there's been moments genuinely in my life where I've looked at you and think, mate, he's definitely not natural. Yeah. But I know you are. But then I look at, but this is your life. And I've always said that. I said, but he's so dedicated. Yeah. But I thought it's from a real healthy way. Yeah. It clearly was. So can we now talk about how you've evolved into this champion? Because let's say you've not just won one title, you had to win the same title 3 times, which is bizarre. So 3 times in a row you won it, and then you ended up becoming this pro. Like, it's an amazing story. So now can we just sort of talk about that mindset and how you've created this person that you are now? Yeah, so I mean, I competed before I moved to Australia, gave it up. Again, my decision. I've chosen to give up competing to go over there. But then I came back and it was like, at that moment where I decided like something needs to change. At that point, I just wanted to find something to give me a level of happiness again. And you start to really think deeply and think like, what do I enjoy doing? And I'd competed, like I say, before Australia, and it was like, I enjoyed doing that, you know? So at that point, it was just, I want to get that back in my life. I want to get back competing. And it's funny, actually, because in them moments when I felt at my lowest, I literally built this vision in my head of just saying in 6 months' time, I'm going to compete again. And just the picture in my head of seeing myself smiling on stage, just smiling. We're not talking about winning or anything. We're just being on stage with a smile on my face. That was enough to keep me going, to think, I'll be smiling again in 6 months' time. Just do what you need to do day by day and work towards that. And when you say in terms of like winning the 3 British titles and then like going on to win the Worlds, it's been the same mindset along the way. It's not like, oh, I'm going to do this achievement, I'm going to win this show. It's just, I'm going to focus on this today, I'm going to focus on this tomorrow. And then along the way, it's been like, okay, I've won this. What's next? Okay, let's aim for this. It's not like I said 3 years ago, I want to be a pro and a world champion. All I wanted to do was put a smile back on my face again. But then when you tick off one thing, you realize that in that process, you've found some levels of happiness, and I want more of that.
And then I'm going to set another goal and just keep reaching higher and higher and higher, because it's in the pursuit of chasing them goals that I've found days of happiness, like some good habits in my life, some good, just day to day. I wake up and I'm excited for my days ahead, just in the pursuit of chasing them goals.
I think that's the key thing. It's like you've never been fixated on winning.
Yeah.
And again, we had Josh Malian, who's now a
Okay,
pro bodybuilder. And again, this talking way in like the early episodes, and he said a very similar thing. He doesn't step on stage to win; he steps on stage to be better than he was last time. Whatever that looks like. But for you, I think the key thing here that you picked up on, I don't think you understand. Maybe you do understand the power of it, but that vision, having that picture.
Yeah.
So again, the brain is so powerful, and the brain doesn't know the difference between the thought and reality. So you've held this image there of just seeing yourself smile.
Yeah.
And you've thought about it so much, and you've suppressed that onto your subconscious, and your subconscious is like, oh, well, this is how we need to feel.
Yeah.
So everything in your being is lining up for you to have this thing. Yeah. Whereas normally people do it for the negative, which is why they always get the negative. So where your attention goes, your energy flows. Yeah. So your attention was on happiness. Yeah. So it wasn't on winning, it was happiness.
And what I'll say on that is when you say my attention was on happiness. So what I realized when what it felt for me was like rock bottom, that was the lowest I've ever been, is nobody's opinions of me are coming to save me. And I came back from Australia and literally every person I saw at first was asking me, what are you doing back here? And I had to tell everyone the same story, to the point where I was anxious of seeing people because I realized I wasn't the same person that left, and they're not, and I'm trying to hide that I'm in this bad place mentally. And it took a few weeks of that before I realized, like, me worrying about what everyone thinks of me is not helping me. And then going forwards, it was almost like, well, I need to do the things that I enjoy, not what other people want to see me doing, because I just need to get some level of happiness back. And the only way I'm going to get that back is by doing the things that I want to do for me, not to try and impress other people.
That's such a powerful thing, because so many people put their life and happiness on hold because of other people's opinions of them. Yeah. And as you said, other people's opinions don't pay the bills when it comes to business, starting a business, doing whatever it is. It doesn't matter. Other people's you can sit there and do nothing with your life. Literally sit in a box, sit in a room, do nothing but breathe and eat. Yeah. People are still going to judge you. Yeah. People judge, that's what they do. Yeah. That's a them problem. That's not a you problem. Yeah. But for you to come to that realization, I think people need to hear that, because so many people don't have that mindset and will never come to that realization that this fear of other people's, again, rejection, like validation, whatever people, doesn't serve you. No. The only thing that serves you is what can you do for you to better your life and make you happy. Exactly. And as long as it's legal, as long as it's ethical, and as long as it's not hurting anybody, do what you need to do to
and
get
one thing you realise is everyone's got their own problems. Everyone's going through something. And like, I don't know if it's ego or whatever, but like, people at the time where I thought everyone was judging me, people don't care about what I'm doing that much. The people that do care about me, they just want to see me happy. And at the end of the day, they will support me, whatever I want to do. Like you say, as long as it's legal and all the rest. They want to see me happy. It's the same as when I won these competitions. Like, the best part of winning that World Championships last year wasn't actually winning the show. It was coming home and I had people coming up to me and I can see tears in their eyes, like, I'm so happy for you. And that's what I mean. Seeing other people happy for you who genuinely care about you means way more than anything. And that, aside from that, like, what really matters, you know?
Exactly, that's the thing, because there is so many people that are going to hate. Yeah. And haters are going to hate. Yeah. Just let them hate, none of your business. Yeah. And I think one of the big things you've said there is that so many people are struggling, and they are, and they project that onto other people. And again, they are the ones that will say stuff. Yeah. But then equally, are they doing what you want to do? Are they a world champion? No. So I don't want to listen to you. Like, you're like, I'm doing what I'm doing here. It's like, and this is something I've sort of come to the realization of, like, we are very quick to listen to other people's opinions. However, if that person isn't doing or hasn't ever done something you want to do, always take that with a pinch of salt, because people will try and put you down to their level because you're making them almost look bad. Yeah. So I'm not saying you had this at all, but again, I imagine in a lot of situations, let's say it's just in a normal 9-to-5 job and you're trying to go for that promotion, so you're there going for that world championship, and a lot of people that want that but don't back themselves to do it. But you sure you want to do that?
And I think what it is as well, say if I had a fear in the last few years of what people thought about me, I'd be crippled by the thought of losing. But I've kind of lost that from being at that point where I realised no one's opinions were saving me. Like, if I win or lose in the eyes of other people, it doesn't really matter. Like,
so you generally weren't bothered winning or losing?
No, I wanted to win bad, but what I'm saying is, like, to be seen to be losing, I would rather that than not put myself on stage through fear of losing and being seen to be losing.
I just want to clarify that.
Yeah,
That.
yeah.
It's like, there's a key point there.
Yeah.
Talk to me about how you stay motivated and disciplined. Because I know that through a lot of this, especially the 3 British Championships, you had a lot of bad times. You were still struggling, going through your own other things. We're not going to go into that. How did you stay motivated during that time? Because I think a lot of people here, I'm not talking about in the bodybuilding world, people in general let life and external situations, external people, whatever it is, affect them, their mood, and it stops them being disciplined. And discipline is doing the things you know you need to do when you don't feel like doing it, which is clearly what you've mastered. Yeah. Because I know what you've been through. How did you develop that discipline? Because that's what people really, really lack.
Yeah. So I think it's through awareness of how well that served me in them times that I was at my lowest, and seeing how it changed me and made me feel better to be disciplined. I kind of know what's the other side of it. So let's say I'm going through a hard time, which I've had in the last couple of years. If I was to give up on my goals, if I was to stop, let's say, training, if I was to stop aiming for these competitions and going back on them promises I've made for myself, I'm only going to end up in a lower place, you know? Whereas I feel the flip side of that, when your actions align every day with what you want to achieve, that can fill you with a lot of confidence. So just knowing that, it becomes a solid thing for me now that I'm always going to have it in place where I've got a goal and I'm going to keep aiming towards it, because what that goal gets me through is sometimes more important than the goal itself. So I'll use bodybuilding as an example, because it's actually an easy one to do. Now, if I've got a goal of this competition, whether I'm feeling a bit anxious and I've lost my appetite, I'm going to make sure I eat my food. If I'm feeling a bit tired and restless, I need to make sure I sleep at night. Also, I'm not going to train so well the next day. So all these habits become a loop whereby they actually make me feel better within that time that I'm going through a hard time, if you see what I mean.
Absolutely.
And I've become very aware of that to the point where I enjoy it even more because I see how it serves me. So even last year, going into that prep before the British Championships and the Worlds eventually, I could feel my mental state start to slip a little bit because of a couple of situations. And all I knew by then from the previous couple of years is you've got to keep going with these goals, because they will serve you well in a few months' time. You will be in a better place for it. And fortunately,
if
I was.
If you don't keep going,
I'm going
You're
down.
going down. You know exactly where that is. And
Yeah.
it's like I said, it just gives you that focus. Again, it gives you a reason to get up in the morning, gives you reasons to try. And you sort of said it's that discipline, that all those good habits, they're good, positive habits that keep you mentally in a good point. And then on top of that, it then pushes you towards your goals. So it's kind of like, you kind of mentioned, I've got a quote here again from you, was talking about like the process more important than the prize.
Yeah, exactly.
So the process and what you got out of it is way more than a little trophy or whatever, like a medal or whatever you got. Like actually the mental, let's be honest, you even being here, because let's just be honest, if you hadn't really had that aha moment, or you didn't really have bodybuilding, who knows where your mental state would have been? Because we all know people that have kind of got into a bad headspace, got themselves out of it, but you only stay there for so long because the habits aren't aligned with that, and then they go back down again.
And that's where I do feel very, very lucky that I've found a passion for what I do now and stuff, because it has helped me through some hard times in my life. It's taught me that discipline that has helped me through what would have been times that would have been very tough mentally. And I can easily say, without going into details, that I've been through worse times in the last couple of years in my life. Things have happened that were way worse than what I'd been through previously, but I'd been able to navigate through them from the lessons that I'd learned from everything I'd been through before, and the fact that I had these solid goals, and I'm going to live my life with that discipline, knowing that it will serve me well mentally long term. And like you say, that means way more than winning a competition.
And again, I've decided not to go down that rabbit hole, by the way. So with that, like I said, when people listen to this, like, why haven't we spoke about that? That's my choice. That's a me thing for doing that. We spoke about that off air. So I've decided we're not going down that rabbit hole because it's not needed, and you've already added way more value than I think I was expecting you to on here. Like you've given some absolute nuggets here. I want to just finish off with a few pointers here, speaking to your fans, bodybuilders, natural bodybuilders, especially, because again, I think there's a lot of people. I wouldn't be doing your audience a good service if I did ask them these questions. The first thing is, what advice would you give to young people, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22? Because I say even maybe 16, 17, because I go into a lot of schools now. that are getting into bodybuilding, are getting into the gym, and they see yourself looking on stage, but then they also see the other guys getting on stage, and they are thinking of taking steroids.
Yeah.
You've never gone down that route. What advice would you give to someone that is wanting to be natural?
Yeah.
Because again, it's a very dangerous minefield out there. So can you just talk to those people for me?
Yeah, what I'll say first of all is, because I have this conversation quite a lot with people who are younger, obviously starting in the gym and stuff like that. You'll probably be able to like relate to this as well, but I feel very lucky that I got into bodybuilding at a time where there was no social media. Because
different ball game now, isn't it, mate?
Different ball game. Because what I'll say is, when I first started going to the gym, it was because I need to get a little bit bigger for football and a little bit stronger, right? So I'm looking in the mirror, I need a little bit more. Put on a little bit of muscle. Then I start to feel a little bit more confident. I start enjoying the gym more and more. And it's like, I'll get a little bit bigger and a little bit bigger. And it's gradually happened over years. And I'm not comparing myself to anyone else.
Just you looking in the mirror.
Just me looking in the mirror on what I want to do day by day. Little bit more, little bit more, little bit more. Now, people are clicking on social media. They see a guy who's absolutely shredded, massive. And it's like, I want to get like that.
In 12 weeks.
Yeah, exactly.
And again, a lot of these people, again, I know a lot, not as much as I used to, but back in the day when we were first started bodybuilding, so I was nowhere near your level, but a lot of people lie.
Yeah.
And what they portray on social media versus reality, and it gives these kids a false expectation of what's actually achievable. Yeah. And again, genetics plays a massive part in it.
And let's say on the flip side of that, if someone does get involved in steroids, they don't actually know what they're letting themselves in for, first of all. So going back to what I've been through, it's happened over a number of years. So the key is probably patience, and that patience, I don't want to get in a discussion here about like being natural versus taking steroids, but for me personally, I feel having that patience and just doing it by self-improvement, not trying to look better than someone else or as big or as shredded as someone else. Just look in the mirror, try and improve what you're doing in the healthiest way possible will serve you so much better long-term than going down that route.
Like I said, I don't judge anyone for any of the decisions
yeah,
they make.
Exactly.
What I would say is just do your due diligence, like actually research it. Don't just listen to that idiot you see down the gym that looks like a balloon. Like just actually go and talk. There's so much resources out there, and especially when you're in your youngest, like reach your natural potential. Yeah. Because you look, how old are you now?
35.
And you're the biggest you've ever been.
Yeah.
Like every time I see you, mate, you're bigger and bigger and bigger. So people talk about natural potential, mate. You are still getting bigger and stronger at 35.
Yeah.
Like, what the hell?
Yeah.
Like, and this is what people don't seem to understand. It's like if you're dedicated to something and you want it long enough, like it will happen naturally. And people want to rush the process when it comes to money or anything nowadays. So I just really wanted to have that for any like, younger audience listening to this. That's a key thing.
And that's it. It's just step by step. Take it nice and slow. Enjoy the journey. Enjoy going to the gym. Enjoy learning new things, new training methods. Learning more and more about nutrition, do things in that respect, and I think most people will be happy that they have done it in that way.
Find what works for you.
Exactly.
Because just something works for you might not work for me.
And like you say, a lot can be achieved naturally. Mm-hmm. And I also have that conversation with a lot of people whereby they don't realize how much can actually be achieved naturally.
Because no one talks about it.
No one talks about it, for one. But also, like I say, I'm on top of my nutrition all the time. I'm on top of my sleep all the time. So people might look at me and go, how's he achieved, like you're saying, you still see me getting bigger and you're like, is he still natural? Yeah. But I'm doing something maybe in some regards that not a lot of people do. I'm focusing on my sleep every night. I'm focusing on my food. So if you're ticking all them boxes, a lot can be achieved naturally.
And I think as well, like, and I've said this during the lockdown period as well, your attitude when you go into the gym, it's like your therapy.
Yeah, exactly.
Like when you're in that gym and you lift some heavy weights, but again, you're doing it because it's your therapy.
Yeah,
you're not doing it for anyone else. You're doing it for your therapy. Exactly. Again, you're doing it to release some of that anger, but then actually the positive outlook of that is it helps you.
No matter what I'm going through in a day or going through that week, I look forward to that time in the gym, because if I'm going through a tough time, I can release my frustrations and I can just channel it in there. And no matter what, no matter how I feel going into the gym, I'll always feel better coming out.
Honestly, mate, This has been a fantastic conversation. I've really, really enjoyed this. One final question. I ask all my guests, and again, normally if we just talk about the bodybuilding, I wouldn't have asked this, but again, I want to know your opinion on this or advice for people. What advice would you give to someone listening right now that does feel stuck and out of control with their life?
So in terms of feeling the lowest of the lows, I think there's two things that you can do. And I think the first one is speak to someone, whether it's one person, whether it's for a few people. And that's for two reasons, really. The first being that, like I say, for me, hiding it from people was causing anxiety. When you speak to someone and share your problem, it's quite empowering because now I've escaped that anxiety. I've shared it with someone. It's like a weight off my shoulders. I haven't got to hide it.
There's a huge weight in it.
So that'll be empowering in itself. And then the second reason for doing that for me is just because when you are literally at the lowest of the lows, just knowing that someone cares can be enough to keep you going.
Absolutely.
So definitely speak to people. And then I'd say later down the line, you want to start to look at ways to make your daily habits align with where you want to go long term as well.
That's a big thing. Like, who do you actually want to become?
Exactly.
What kind of person you want to become, and what kind of habits would that person do?
Yeah.
Like, be that kind of person, do the things they'll do, and you have those things. I think it's brilliant.
Yeah.
Mate, where can people find out more information about you? Obviously, I know you've got a YouTube channel, but what's your Instagram? What's your YouTube channel?
Yep. So my Instagram is just my name, David Langsdale, with an underscore at the end, and the YouTube channel is just my name as well. So yeah, just on both of those.
Awesome. I get Mikey to ping it all across the bottom of the screen. It'll also be in the show notes as well. Dave, thank you very much for your time today, mate.
Thank you for having me on. Honestly, it's been an honour. I was really nervous about coming on, opening up about this stuff, but just like when we sat in the pub, the conversation just flows with you, mate. It's a pleasure talking to you.
Mate, thank you very much. We'll have to do this again sometime.
Yeah, definitely.